Okay, so I've wanted a carbon crankset for a very long time, but in general, these things are incredibly expensive. I mean, the Post 100 quid or around 1,500 bucks, and it doesn't even come with the chain rings. Carbon crankset, that is nearly one level of magnitude cheaper. So yeah, let's check it out. My name, as always, is Luke, and welcome back to TraceVelo. Now, every month or so, I type carbon crankset into AliExpress, and for the last few years, most of the results that come up are either some expensive, name, completely unbranded cranks that don't necessarily scream quality. However, a few months back, a carbon crankset from this brand called Racework kept showing up on AliExpress. Now, the first batch of them sold out really quickly, so I didn't actually manage to get a set, but they got restocked, and your boy managed to buy one. And yeah, here it is. Now, it's worth pointing out, Racework didn't send these to me. I actually bought them with my own cash. So, with that in mind, let's check these out. Okay, so first things first, let's get these unboxed. Well, it didn't really come in a box, but it was nicely packaged, and really, you basically get the one-piece 2x chainring, which is made of aluminium, or hollowing out on the reverse to save a bit of weight, which is cool. And then, once I got these unwrapped in a second, we've got the 170mm carbon crank arms, and this one with the axle is the drive side. Again, looks fantastic. No scuffs or damage or anything like that. Like I said, these were really well packaged. Now, you also get an aluminium preload cap that screws into the axle, the 3 bolts to mount the chainrings, and some pedal washers, which is a nice addition actually. So assembly is easy. It uses a SRAM GXP mounting standard, and you can see here I've put a touch of grease around the mounting face. I find it helps to prevent creaks later down the line, but do be careful not to get it inside the threads of the screw mounting holes. The 3 bolts, just 9 Newton meters, and yeah, that's basically it. Now, the axle looks great. It's Shimano Hollowtech standard, so 24mm in diameter, and it's allegedly made from a high-strength 7075 T6 aluminium alloy. I'm not sure if it's anodized, it could be, but the surface is glossy rather than the more matte finish you get with anodizing, but either way, it looks totally fine. The axle clamp for the non-drive side looks great too. I like the red aluminium insert and load over the carbon in this region of the crank arm. The threads for the pedals look good too, a nicely machined aluminium insert used here, so hopefully this should be nice and robust. So overall, first impressions of the SRAM XX1 cranks. There are obviously a number of differences, but I can definitely see where they took the inspiration for the design. Now, ring comes to a respectable 168 grams, and altogether the entire setup weighs 548 grams. Not too shabby, if you ask me. For some comparison, the fully aluminium crankset that I previously reviewed, that this is replacing, weighs in at 721 grams, and a more standard Tiagra 4700 crank comes in at 953. So yeah, this Racework crank is it's pretty damn light basically. I stopped using it because the hollowed out crank arms reportedly snapped under heavy loads. At least that's what some of you in the audience told me. So you can hopefully see quite a lot of flex in these, and that's actually one of the reasons I took them off the bike. Not particularly confidence inspiring. Next up, the Tiagra 4700 crankset. This has a steel axle and some really robust aluminium crank arms. Not much flex in this at all, which I would expect given its construction and overall weight. And lastly, the Racework crankset. A little bit of flex here with my body weight on it, but from what I felt, it's basically on par. Right then, cost. So, delivered to my door, these things were £138, 89p. So yeah, not bad at all, if you ask me. A SRAM Red crankset will set you back basically double, and actually weighs quite a lot more, at 609 grams. So much heavier. Anyway, after all that, let's get this thing installed. So, pulling the existing crankset off the bike, yeah, that's pretty easy. And then I'll put a bit of grease on the axle of the Racework crank and get it slapped on. Easy peasy. And a little bit of bonus content for you here. So I'm also trying out a new 12-speed cassette. It's a hybrid aluminium and steel one. So hopefully you can see the 4 largest sprockets are milled out of a single block or billet of aluminium, while the rest kind of made of the standard steel. Now, I've used these type of cassettes quite a lot in the past, and I've done an episode on it already actually, but those were 11-speed varieties. On 12-speed cassettes, the teeth and the sprockets are spaced closer together, so the tolerances need to be spot on for good shifting. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. And this VG Sports 12-speed chain. So some of you will know I tested a VG Sports chain before, and the results were they were dreadful, to be honest with you. It was in the bin after just 700 miles. But VG Sports wanted a chance at redemption, so they sent this over, and I'm testing it again. So yeah, get subscribed.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Right then, snappy little sponsor spot. Sirocco, love these guys. They've been a sponsor for a while now, and they do some really great value cycle kit that looks great on the bike, washes well, lasts ages, and is super comfy as well. Everything from jackets, jerseys, gilets, bib shorts, cycle socks, cycle glasses, everything you need really. And I wear their stuff on every single ride I do. So yeah, if you want to help me out a little bit here on the channel and get yourself some wicked cycle kit, it's genuinely really good stuff, then yeah, use my link in the description below and save yourself 10% off your order with Sirocco. Right, bish bash bosh, back to the episode. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, this carbon crankset here. Now, I'm only about 150, 160 miles into it at this point, so admittedly, not a lot, but during my rides, I've really tried to put it under stress. So really putting some wattage through it in the climbs and the sprints, and bunny hopping off curbs, basically trying to give it as much abuse as I can, and it's been pretty much flawless, to be honest with you. As you can see here, shifting in and out of the big ring is great. Nice and consistent, no problems at all, really, and it looks fantastic on the bike as well, if you ask me. I'm not normally one for flashy gold accents, but in this case, with the gold chain, the little gold features on the group set and on the crank set as well, I think it looks freaking cool. Now, the total weight of this bike, before any of the changes that I made in today's episode, it came out to 7.74 kilograms, which you can see here. Now, with the lighter carbon crankset and also the lightweight cassette that I threw in the mix as well, the new weigh-in, it comes out to 7.47 kilograms. So yeah, 270 grams lighter, 170 of that being from the crankset, and I'm really happy with it. Plus, with bottle cages, pedals, Garmin mount, and also this little mudguard here, yeah, it comes in at under 7.5 kilos for this thing. So I am a happy camper. This thing does feel a bit more nimble out on the road actually, and it might be kind of a bit of a placebo type effect, but when I'm out of the saddle really putting the power down in the sprints, I definitely feel like these are stiffer than the last set of cranks on here, so I'm really happy about that. Weight limit for these things. Now, the THM claviculas that I mentioned earlier, their rider weight limit is 100 kilograms, which is pretty standard for a lot of the lightweight carbon bike parts that I see. So kind of going off that and also assuming these probably aren't quite as good quality and certainly won't be as rigorously tested as those things, I would say 90 kilograms is probably a pretty safe bet for the rider weight limit for these cranks. Now, I actually use pedal extenders on my bike, and I showcased them in the last episode I did, so go and check that out if you are interested. But using pedal extenders like these will increase the leverage and therefore the amount of stress on the ends of these carbon crank arms here. Now, I weigh 73 kilograms, but if you're a bit of a heavier rider and you use pedal extenders, I've not had an issue, but be cognizant that these are on the cheaper end of the spectrum in terms of, carbon crank arms. Just be cognizant of that and try and be sensible. Another point of concern for me, and it's to be expected when you're chasing these kind of weight savings, it's the longevity of which is a great choice for this application, but it's still aluminium and it will be a lot softer and less durable than the steel chain rings that most of you are probably using. Quite thin actually. I don't think it's going to last a particularly long time. Now, I've actually used one-piece chain rings just like this in the past, and if you get 4,000 or 5,000 miles out of one of these things, yeah, you're doing pretty well. However, the GXP mounting system that this thing uses for the chain rings means that A, they're really easy to get on and off and replace them. 80 quid on AliExpress, so yeah, pretty cheap. Now, one other thing which is probably good to be aware of, the aluminium axle in here rather than a steel one. So on a previous episode, I discussed some reports of aluminium axles actually snapping on a cheaper crankset with an aluminium axle. This probably has 6,000 to 8,000 miles on it, and I've got another Cenex crankset in the back there with an aluminium axle. That probably has another 2,000 miles on it. Both of these are absolutely fine. And in fact, SRAM, in their dub cranksets, they've been using aluminium axles for years without any issues. So I suspect it was probably just a bad batch of these axles that ended up snapping, which is, yeah, it's unfortunate. But from what I can see, this crankset here does not suffer with that problem, so I actually have no concerns about that aluminium axle. So overall, this thing is super lightweight, looks fantastic. It's well constructed, shifts well, rides well, no creaks, no fuss. Yeah, I really like it. £140 is a great price, if you ask me. And if you just need the crank arms and not the chain rings, that's £114. So yeah, even cheaper. Anyway, like I said, Racework haven't sponsored this video. They've never like messaged me or anything. I bought these with my own money, but I have put an affiliate link in the description to the seller that I used on AliExpress. So if you did want to pick up a pair of these, then yeah, use my link. It won't cost you any more, but it will help me out. So, altruism. It's what you're doing. Helping out those in need. It's charity work. Those of you that don't know, I quit my regular job a few weeks ago to do this full-time, which is terrifying. So anything you can do to stave off that ever-present fear of failure, I'll let you know. Right, subscribe if you like this kind of thing. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this beautiful episode that I've done for you. And if you've got any questions or comments for me about these cranks or anything you like, leave me a comment, preferably with some baguette emojis, and I'll see what I can do. Right, see you next time. Ciao!